So listen, as the war with Iran and this extended government shutdown raises prices for a lot of Americans, lawmakers have left Washington. So the government is still partially shut down. Lawmakers are out of town for a couple of weeks. But if they wanted an anonymous vacation, one outlet is trying to dash their hopes of that, TMZ. Going beyond the typical, celeb drama and getting in on the congressional drama, of which there is plenty. Their trademark surreptitious snaps going viral, showing these various lawmakers anywhere but the Capitol. Like here, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. The man is at Disney World. Let him. He's on Space Mountain. He's got a little bubble wand, little mermaid situation. There's a lot of those at Disney. California Congressman Robert Garcia. He's in Vegas at a casino. Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He's at the airport in Fort Lauderdale. A bunch of others, too, captured on camera by TMZ. Their executive producer, Harvey Levin, told one outlet they've covered politics for years, but they're deciding to amp up their presence and their voice with a producer and a photographer on the Hill. Ryan Nobles is joining us now. Here's the thing. We're in a partial government shutdown. We've seen the TSA lines. Those have abated for now, but DHS is still shut down. Lawmakers are certainly allowed to go and take time off.
Yeah.
But what TMZ is saying basically is we don't have to make it comfortable for them.
No.
We can follow them the way we follow Gwyneth Paltrow or whoever and show people where they are and really try to amp up the pressure on them. That is what Harvey Levin is trying pretty explicitly to do, it seems.
Yeah, and these are public figures, right? Their comings and goings are in the public interest.
They are the most public of figures.
Exactly.
They are probably arguably more public figures than the celebrities that TMZ usually covers.
And at this particular moment in time, I think it is particularly interesting that they are not here in Washington trying to solve this problem and are at places like Disney World and Las Vegas. Now, all these folks that you've mentioned have responded to this in some form or fashion. Lindsey Graham has said that it's not his fault that the government hasn't been funded, that he said he voted to fund the government 7 different times, call a Democrat, and then he separately posted a picture of him shooting clays. Robert Garcia had what I would say is a reasonable excuse as well. He said, I don't mind what TMZ is doing here. Like the story says, my dad's lived in Vegas for 15 years. I finished lunch with him. I like to see him whenever I can. And he thinks that Speaker Johnson should not have sent them home. And I do think that this is maybe where some of the nuance that's missing in the TMZ reporting is it's not necessarily the fault of a rank and file legislator that they're not here. It's the responsibility of leadership to keep them here. And the leadership has collectively decided that they don't feel that there's a reason to be here because they don't have a deal. But I do think that there is some kind of groundswell of interest by the rank and file members to say to their leadership, hey, we should probably be here solving this problem instead of letting us go on this prearranged vacation. And I think that pressure campaign on some level, whether it comes from TMZ or just people in their own communities and TikTok or whatever the case may be, perhaps it does compel them to try and change the conversation here.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that if there is any lever that TMZ may want to pull, given their stated goals here, it's probably to have more pictures of John Thune and Mike Johnson versus some of the rank and file members.
Yeah, I think all of it probably impacts it. But here's what I would also say about TMZ's entry into this, right? I think what it reflects is a stunning lack of understanding by these members at just how ticked off the average American is.
Say more.
If TMZ has decided that this is a space that they should play in, that tells us that their algorithm or their viewership numbers are responding when they post these pictures of these members. And it's telling us that the American people are angry that these guys are at Disney World and are at Las Vegas and are at Fort Lauderdale, as opposed to being here in Washington. And so I think what I've been most frustrated by in covering this shutdown, which is now the longest shutdown in government history, is kind of a stunning lack of urgency by these members of Congress to try and solve the problem.
They took their weekends. They're taking their recess
And the
breaks.
idea that they would just leave for 2 weeks with this issue staring at them, I don't know. I just think that they don't understand just how mad the average American is.
Here's how the executive producer of TMZ justified this whole thing, this foray into politics for them.
There has to be some kind of a movement because they are insulting our intelligence by thinking, oh, we can get over on them by blaming it on the other party. It's not the other party, it's both parties. And we are kind of sick of the way they are patronizing us, and that's why we're doing this.
And to your point, Ryan, it does feel like he and TMZ there are channeling the anger of Americans in this new push that's, splashed all over their website now.
And here's the thing that I don't think these members of Congress understand. It's the point I was trying to make to Speaker Johnson before they left on Friday. Every time you talk to one of these members, they agree, this is terrible. These TSA lines are awful. These people should be getting paid, but it's the other guy's fault. The American people are sick and tired of hearing it's the other guy's fault. They want to know what you're doing to solve this problem, beyond just saying it's the other guy's fault. And there is a responsibility for both Republicans and Democrats in that space. It's not my job to say who's more or less responsible, but collectively, all of them need to come together and figure this out.
Well, bottom line, though, they're not back as far as we know.
So they can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they say they're talking behind the scenes. I think that's true.
Okay.
But they don't ever really accomplish anything unless they're all here and they're forced to deal with it.
Ryan Nobles, what an interesting twist in the tale of Washington here.
Yes, always. We welcome all outlets.
That's right.
TMZ.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ryan Nobles, thank you so much.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.